Most men who swear to destroy the mafia never get close enough to try, but occasionally, one does. He gets inside, learns the language, earns the trust, studies every room, every name, every pressure point in the entire structure. And then something happens that no one predicted. Not his superiors, not the organization he infiltrated, not even him. He stops being the man who came to bring it down and becomes the man it cannot function without. Park Young-woo did not fall into the Haitian cartel. He was sent in deliberately, with a badge, a mission, and 11 years of law enforcement discipline behind him. He had a file on every senior figure in the network. He had a plan. He had a handler. He had everything a man needs to dismantle a criminal empire from the inside. What he did not have was an answer for what happens when the empire decides it wants you more than your own side does, and offers you something your own side never could: power. This is not a story about corruption. It is a story about the moment a man realizes the line he swore to protect was never as straight as they told him. Before this story goes any further, and it is going to go very far, do something right now. Follow this channel. Not because I'm asking, because of what you are actually getting access to when you do. Every week, we go inside the stories that should not exist in public. The ones that powerful organizations, criminal, political, financial, spent serious money ensuring never got told with this level of detail. The Korean underworld. The networks that don't appear in documentaries. The men who built empires inside systems designed to stop them. And the specific, documented moments where those empires cracked from the inside. Not a rumor. Not speculation. Research. Structured. Told with the pacing and the depth these stories actually deserve. If you came here for surface-level crime content, this is the wrong channel. But if you came here because you want to understand how power actually works, how it is built, how it is held, and what it costs the people who get closest to it, then you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Follow now, because Park Young-woo's story is about to go somewhere that most people who start it are not prepared for. There is a version of Park Young-woo's story that the Korean National Police Agency would prefer you never heard. Not because it is the most violent story in their archives. They have it worse. Not because it exposes the most senior names inside the Haitian cartel. There are files buried deeper than this one. This story was suppressed for one specific reason. And that reason has nothing to do with national security. It has everything to do with what this story proves about the institution that sent Young-woo in. This wasn't just an undercover operation that went wrong. It was a systemic failure that the people responsible for it have spent 15 years disguising as a success. This wasn't just a detective who got too deep. It was a man who was given an impossible assignment, stripped of adequate support at the critical moment, and then watched by the very people who sent him, as the organization he was supposed to destroy decided it wanted him more than they did. This wasn't just a story about one man crossing a line. It's a story about what happens when an institution builds a weapon, aims it at a criminal empire, and then loses grip of it mid-flight. Park Young-woo was not a reckless man. He was not an ambitious one, not in the way the word is usually meant. He did not enter law enforcement for status or salary or the specific performance of authority that draws certain personalities to the badge. He entered because of something that happened when he was 14 years old in Incheon. Something his file records in 2 clinical sentences, in which he has never, in any documented interview or testimony, discussed in more than one sentence himself. His older brother. A debt. A man came to collect it. And a night that left Young-woo understanding, with a specific clarity that only proximity to violence produces. That the people who were supposed to prevent what happened to his brother. I arrived 40 minutes after it was already over. He became a detective because he believed the institution could be faster than that, better than that, more present than it had been on that night in Incheon. For 11 years. He was right. Young-woo's record inside the Korean National Police Agency's Organized Crime Division was, by any professional measure, exceptional. Not decorated in the visible, ceremonial sense, The work he did was not the kind that produces commendations. It produces results that are filed, classified, and attributed to the division rather than the individual, which suited him. He did not need the attribution. He needed the outcome. 7 successful infiltration operations across 9 years. For prosecutions that produced convictions at the senior level of 3 separate criminal networks. A reputation inside the division. Quiet, consistent, never spoken directly. That if you needed someone placed inside a structure that would kill them the moment they were identified. Yung-woo was the name that came up. The Haitian assignment was different from the beginning. Not in its stated objectives. Infiltrate the mid-tier operational structure of the Haitian cartel, identify senior decision-makers, document financial routing, build a prosecutable case from the inside. Standard architecture. Familiar parameters. But different in one specific way that Yung-woo noted in his initial briefing, in which his handler dismissed without recorded response. The Haitian cartel was not like the networks he had previously infiltrated. It was not held together by fear. It was not held together by money. It was held together by something far more difficult to prosecute, and far more dangerous to spend extended time inside of. Belonging. The Haitian cartel, at every level of its structure, operated on the principle that the people inside it were not employees. They were family, not metaphorically, structurally, with all the psychological weight, and all the moral complexity that the word actually carries. And Park Yung-woo, a man who had lost his brother at 14, spent 11 years inside an institution that attributed his work to the division rather than to him, and had never once in his adult life been offered the specific experience of being irreplaceable. I was about to spend 18 months inside it. His handler noted the assignment parameters, logged the start date, and did not record what that combination of factors might produce in a man like Yung-woo. That omission would cost the Korean National Police Agency everything. To understand what Yung-woo walked into, you first have to understand what the Haitian cartel actually was. Not what it looked like from the outside. Not the version that appeared in organized crime briefings and police division reports. What it actually was. Because the gap between those two things is where this entire story lives. The Haitian cartel was founded in Incheon in the early 1990s. Not in a backroom, not in a warehouse. In a registered logistics company with 12 employees, a government import license, and a lease on 4,000 square meters of port-adjacent warehouse space. Its founder, a man known internally as Chairman O, was not a violent man. He had never, in any documented account, personally ordered or witnessed an act of physical violence. He did not need to, because Chairman O understood something that most criminal organizations take decades to learn, and most never learn at all. The most durable power is the kind that never has to announce itself. By the late 1990s, Haitian controlled cargo facilitation across Incheon port's 3 primary commercial terminals. Not all cargo. The specific cargo that moves between the manifest and the hold. In the space where documentation becomes approximate. By 2003, legitimate construction and property holdings across Incheon, Seoul, and Busan valued at over 1.4 trillion Korean won. By 2008, penetration inside 2 metropolitan police divisions, 1 port authority board, and a senior advisory position inside the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. Not through bribes. Through the same mechanism Chairman O had always used. Dependency. He did not buy people. He made himself necessary to them. And once a person needs you, really needs you, in the specific way that involves their career, their family's security, and the particular silence they require about something they cannot afford to have spoken aloud. They are no longer an asset you manage. They are a structure you inhabit. At its operational peak, the Haitian cartel was not the largest criminal organization in South Korea. It was the most stable one. And stability, in the criminal world, is worth more than size. Size attracts attention. Stability attracts nothing, because it has made itself indistinguishable from the legitimate world surrounding it. Haitian senior leadership sat on charity boards, attended government infrastructure forums, sent their children to universities in the United States and the United Kingdom. They did not live like criminals. They lived like the upper tier of Korean corporate society, because that is exactly what they had constructed around themselves. But here is what the briefing documents Young-woo received before his assignment did not adequately convey. The Haitian cartel's most important structural feature was not its financial reach. It was not its government penetration. It was the culture. Inside Haitian, at every level, from the port workers who facilitated undocumented cargo movement to the mid-tier operational managers who ran the legitimate business arms, there was a specific, palpable sense of collective identity. These were not people who worked for an organization. They were people who belonged to one. New members were not recruited transactionally. They were brought in gradually, carefully, through existing relationships, vouched for by people who staked their own standing on the introduction. Loyalty was not demanded. It was cultivated over months, sometimes years, until it became something the person themselves could not clearly distinguish from genuine attachment. Chairman O called it, in the single recorded internal address that survives in partial defector testimony, the only family that chooses you back. 5 words, delivered quietly, without ceremony, to a room of 30 people who would have done anything he asked after hearing them. This was what Park Young-woo's handler sent him into, with a cover identity, a fabricated work history, a contact inside Haitian's mid-tier logistics operation, and a timeline of 18 months to build a prosecutable case. 18 months. Inside a structure that had spent 30 years perfecting the specific art of making people feel that there was nowhere else they had ever truly belonged. His handler called it an assignment. Chairman O would have called it something else entirely. A recruitment. Here is the first impossible thing. Park Young-woo entered the Haitian cartel on the 14th of March, with a cover identity so thoroughly constructed that it had taken his division's intelligence unit 4 months to build. Fabricated employment records, a backstory verified through 2 independent sources already inside Haitian's peripheral network, a personality profile calibrated specifically to appeal to the mid-tier operational manager he was being introduced through, a man named Kwon Dae-young, 43 years old, 15 years inside Haitian, trusted completely by the tier above him, and critically, a man who valued one thing above everything else in a new contact. Steadiness. Not skill, not ambition, not charisma. Steadiness. The specific quality of a person who does not react, does not overclaim, does not perform reliability, but simply demonstrates it, repeatedly, without requiring acknowledgement. Young-woo had been demonstrating that quality for 11 years inside law enforcement. It was, in the most uncomfortable sense, completely genuine. Kwon Dae-young noticed within 3 weeks, and moved him upward. Here is the second impossible thing. By the 6th month of his assignment, Park Young-woo was the most effective undercover operative the Korean National Police Agency had placed inside a senior criminal structure in over a decade. His intelligence was precise. His positioning was exceptional. He had access to operational conversations that his division had never previously reached. He was, by every external measure, doing exactly what he had been sent to do. And he was also, for the first time in his adult life, somewhere that felt like it was built for him. Not the criminality. That distinction matters, and it needs to be stated clearly. Young-woo was not seduced by the money. He was not corrupted by proximity to violence or power in the way that simpler narratives about institutional betrayal tend to describe. What happened to him was quieter than that, and more structurally significant. What happened was Kwon Dae-young. Kwon was not a sophisticated man. He was not educated beyond high school. He did not speak about loyalty in philosophical terms or frame his commitment to Haitian in any language that could be described as ideological. He simply showed up for the people around him, consistently, without calculation, without the specific social accounting that most professional environments including 11 years inside a police division. Conduct quietly beneath every act of apparent generosity. When Young-woo's fabricated backstory included a detail about a difficult period between jobs, Kwon did not file it away as useful intelligence about a new contact's vulnerability. He asked about it the following week. Not to probe, because he had remembered, because he was the kind of man who remembered things about people and checked on them. Young-woo had not had a colleague do that in 11 years. By month 8, he was attending Kwon's family dinner on the first Sunday of every month. Kwon's wife called him by his cover name with the specific warmth reserved for people who have graduated from guest to fixture. Kwon's youngest daughter, 7 years old, entirely unimpressed by everyone, had decided, without announcement, that Young-woo was her preferred audience for a running commentary on the injustices of second grade. He listened, every time, without performance, because somewhere between the cover identity and the assignment timeline, he had stopped performing. This is the crack. Not a dramatic moment. Not a single conversation that crossed a line. A 7-year-old girl who trusted him without reason. And a man who remembered the difficult period in a fabricated backstory. Because that was simply who he was. He filed his month 9 report on a Tuesday evening, sitting in the car outside Kwon's building. He wrote the clinical language, the operational updates, the intelligence his division had been waiting for. And then he sat in the dark for 11 minutes, not reviewing the report, not planning the next week's positioning, just sitting, with the specific weight of a man who has begun to understand that the thread he was supposed to be holding back to himself has been fraying for longer than he noticed, and that he is no longer certain which side of the line he is actually standing on. Stop here for a moment, because what you just watched happen to Young-woo, that slow, structural erosion of a man who believed his discipline was permanent, is not unique to him. It is not a flaw in his character. It is not a failure of his training. It is something that the research on long-term undercover operations has documented consistently, and which the institutions that run those operations have never adequately solved. Because it cannot be solved. Not entirely. And the reason it cannot be solved is the same reason this story is worth your full attention. Human beings are not built for sustained performance. We are built for belonging. And when a person, no matter how disciplined, no matter how trained, no matter how clearly they understand the parameters of their assignment, when that person finds genuine belonging inside the structure they were sent to dismantle, the mission does not end. It bifurcates. Two parallel realities. Two versions of the same person, running simultaneously, until the moment arrives when they can no longer coexist. And a choice has to be made. Young-woo has not made that choice yet, but it is coming. And when it arrives, it will not look the way you are expecting. Before we get there, this is the moment where I ask you to do something. Not for me. For the version of yourself that found this story and stayed with it. Follow this channel. Subscribe. Right now. Because here is what that actually means. In practical terms, for the next time you open this app, it means the next story we tell about the Haitian network's internal war after Young-woo's cover fractures. About the Japanese syndicate that tried to absorb 3 Korean criminal organizations simultaneously and destroyed itself in the attempt. About the prosecutor who built a 15-year case against a criminal empire, and then discovered, the week before trial, that the empire had been inside his office the entire time. Those stories find you, without you having to search. Your follow. For access to the stories that don't get told anywhere else with this level of depth and structural honesty. That is what this channel is. Not crime content. Not dramatized reconstructions with actors and licensed music. The actual architecture. The mechanics underneath the story. Told with the pacing and the detail they deserve. If that is the content you came here for, the follow button is right there. Press it, and we continue. Because Young-woo is still sitting in that car outside Kwon's building. Still holding a report he has completed. Still not moving. And 3 floors above him, Kwon Dae-young is switching off the lights in his living room. completely unaware that the man he has spent 9 months bringing closer to the center of everything he protects is a detective who was sent to destroy him, who is no longer certain he can. The Haitian cartel did not recruit Park Young-woo with money. They did not recruit him with threats. They simply did what they had always done. With every person who spent enough time inside their structure, they made him feel that the version of himself that existed inside their world was more complete than the version that existed outside it. And that realization, arriving quietly, without announcement, somewhere between month 9 and month 12, was the most dangerous thing that had ever happened to the Korean National Police Agency's most reliable undercover operative. Now we stop feeling, and we look at what the record actually shows. Because everything you have watched unfold between Young-woo and the Haitian structure, the belonging, the erosion, the specific weight of a man sitting in a car outside a building he should be treating as a target, is not speculation. It is documented. Fact 1. Long-term undercover operatives placed inside Korean criminal organizations without adequate extraction protocols experienced documented identity erosion at a rate that the KNPA's own internal review, conducted in 2014 and classified at division level, described as systemic rather than exceptional. The review examined 11 deep cover operations conducted between 2001 and 2013. Of those 11, 7 produced operatives who required formal psychological intervention upon extraction. 3 produced operatives who requested reassignment to non-operational roles permanently. 1 produced an operative who did not extract at all. The review recommended mandatory psychological evaluation at 90-day intervals for all deep cover assignments exceeding 6 months. That recommendation was logged, discussed in 2 subsequent divisional meetings, and never implemented. Young-woo's assignment had no scheduled psychological evaluation. It had a handler who received monthly reports, and a division that was receiving the best organized crime intelligence it had seen in a decade, and did not ask questions about the cost. Fact 2. The Haitian cartel's internal onboarding structure, documented in testimony provided by 2 senior defectors between 2009 and 2016, included a deliberate and methodical process of social integration that its senior leadership understood, with complete clarity, produced loyalty more durable than any financial incentive. New members were never given immediate operational responsibility. They were given proximity to people, to families, to the specific texture of daily life inside the organization. Chairman O did not design this process intuitively. He modeled it, according to one defector account, on the specific mechanisms used by high-retention religious organizations to integrate new members, not the theology, the social architecture. An undercover operative placed inside that structure, without countermeasures specifically designed to address it, was not infiltrating a criminal organization. He was being recruited by one. Fact 3. Park Young-woo's Month 11 intelligence report, the last one his handler described internally as fully reliable, contained a specific anomaly that was noted, flagged, and then set aside without follow-up action. The anomaly was not in the content of the report. It was in what the report did not contain. For the first 10 months of his assignment, Young-woo's reports had included, without exception, detailed relational mapping, names, connection patterns, the specific social dynamics between individuals at every level of the structure he was observing. Month 11 contained operational intelligence, logistics data, financial routing indicators, movement patterns of senior figures, but the relational mapping was absent. His handler noted the gap in a margin comment, filed the report, did not raise it in the subsequent briefing call, because the operational intelligence was exceptional, and the division was under pressure to produce prosecutable material before the assignment's 18-month window closed. What the absent relational mapping actually indicated was that Young-woo had stopped being able to write about the people inside Haitian, the way you write about targets. Fact 4. There is a threshold concept in undercover operational psychology, documented across multiple law enforcement research programs in South Korea, the United Kingdom, and the United States, called the point of no extractable return. It does not describe the moment an operative consciously decides to switch sides. It describes something quieter and far more difficult to reverse. The moment the operative's authentic identity and their cover identity become, for all practical psychological purposes, the same person. After that threshold, extraction does not restore the original operative. It produces someone new. Jung-woo crossed that threshold somewhere between month 10 and month 12. His division did not know. His handler did not know. Kwon Dae-young did not know. The only person who came close to knowing was Chairman Oh, who said nothing and waited. Let's be precise about what was now at stake. Not emotionally, structurally. Because when the Korean National Police Agency's Internal Review Board eventually examined what happened with Jung-woo's assignment, the question they spent the most time on was not the one you would expect. It was not, how did we lose him? It was, how did we not see it coming? And the answer to that question is the most damaging part of this entire story, because they had seen it coming, partially, in fragments. The absent relational mapping in month 11. The slight shift in report texture that his handler noted and did not pursue. The month 12 check-in call where Jung-woo answered every question correctly, and his handler logged the call as clean, despite an 18-second pause before one specific answer that the handler's own notes described in the margin as unusual. Monitor. Monitor. One word, written in a margin, and then nothing. Here is the first consequence. When Jung-woo's cover was eventually compromised, not by his own action, but by a surveillance error made by a junior officer conducting parallel observation without adequate coordination, the division lost not just an operative. They lost everything he had not yet reported. And what Jung-woo had not reported, by month 13, was more significant than what he had. He had been inside conversations that mapped the full financial routing of Haitian's port operation. He had been present for 2 senior-level planning discussions that would have produced the prosecutable case his division needed. He had documentation, held in his own memory, not yet committed to a report. That would have been the most significant organized crime intelligence the KNPA had produced in 15 years. None of it was ever filed. Here is the second consequence. The junior officer whose surveillance error compromised Jung-woo's cover was identified within 48 hours by Haitian's internal security operation. Not Jung-woo, the junior officer, who was 26 years old, 8 months out of the police academy, assigned to parallel observation without adequate briefing on the sensitivity of the operation he was supporting. What happened to that officer is recorded in a separate file, one that has never been made public. Jung-woo knew what happened. He was inside the Haitian structure when the information came in. He heard the conversation. He saw the faces of the men around him, including Kwon Dae-young, as the situation was discussed and resolved. And he said nothing, filed nothing, reported nothing, which tells you everything you need to know about where Park Jung-woo was standing by month 13 of an 18-month assignment. Here is the third consequence. Chairman Oh called Jung-woo into his office. For the first time, for days after the surveillance compromise. Not to confront him, not to expose him, not to resolve the question of who and what he actually was. Chairman Oh sat across from him, in the same boardroom with the floor-to-ceiling windows, and spoke for 11 minutes about loyalty. Not Haitian's loyalty, not the organization's expectations. He spoke about what loyalty does to the person who practices it, how it changes the architecture of a man, how it becomes, over time, less a choice, and more a condition, like gravity, like breath. He did not ask Jung-woo a single question. He did not need to, because at the end of those 11 minutes, Jung-woo understood with complete clarity that Chairman Oh already knew exactly who had walked into his organization 14 months ago, and had decided, deliberately, patiently, with the specific precision of a man who had built an empire on making people necessary to him. To keep him anyway. Stop here. Because before we go into the final act, before we get to what Yung-woo chose, what it cost, and what the Haitian cartel became because of that choice, there is something you now understand. That the Korean National Police Agency's review board spent 18 months trying to articulate, and never quite did. And it is worth naming it clearly, because it changes everything about how you watch what comes next. Most people who hear a story like this reach for the same explanation. Corruption. A good man who wanted money. Or power. Or safety. A man who looked at what the other side was offering and made a calculation. That explanation is clean. It is satisfying. It fits inside the existing frameworks we use to understand institutional betrayal. And it is almost entirely wrong. What happened to Park Yung-woo was not corruption. Corruption implies a transaction. A moment of decision where a person weighs what they are giving up against what they are receiving, and chooses the receiving. Yung-woo never made that calculation, because he never reached the moment where a calculation was possible. By the time Chairman Oh sat across from him in that boardroom and spoke for 11 minutes about what loyalty does to the architecture of a man, Yung-woo was not being offered a choice. He was being shown a mirror, and what he saw in it was not a detective who had been corrupted by proximity to a criminal organization. It was a man who had spent 14 months being, for the first time in his adult life, completely himself, not performing, not constructing, not maintaining the careful distance that 11 years inside an institution had taught him was the price of professional survival. Just, present, known, valued not for his output, but for his presence. And Chairman O, who had spent 30 years studying the specific gravitational pull of belonging on human beings, knew exactly what that recognition would do to a man like Yung-woo. He had been watching it happen since month 3. This is what the review board could not bring itself to write in plain language. The Korean National Police Agency did not lose Park Yung-woo to the Haitian cartel. They lost him to something they had never adequately provided. And the Haitian cartel did not steal him. They simply offered what was already missing. Here is what that means for you. As someone now watching the final act of this story unfold, the warning in Yung-woo's story is not, don't get too close to what you are investigating. That is the surface reading, the institutional reading, the reading that protects the organization from examining its own role in what happened. The real warning is this. Institutions that treat people as functions, that attribute their work to the division rather than the individual, that provide adequate operational support, but never once ask whether the person inside the operation is still intact. Do not lose operatives to criminal organizations. They create the conditions in which criminal organizations become more habitable than the institution itself. The Haitian cartel did not have a recruitment strategy for Yung-woo. The Korean National Police Agency did. They just never knew they were running it in reverse. And here is the opportunity. Because this story tells you something precise and actionable about power. Real power. The kind that lasts 30 years without a single successful prosecution, is never built on fear. It is built on the specific, irreplaceable experience of making people feel that they matter, that they are seen, that the version of themselves that exists inside your structure is the most complete version they have ever been. Chairman O understood this, built an empire on it, and then, quietly, deliberately, without a single raised voice or explicit offer, applied it to the most dangerous man the Korean National Police Agency had ever sent through his door. What Yung-woo chose after that boardroom conversation, what it cost the people around him, what it made him, and what the Haitian cartel became because of it. That is what we are walking into now, and it does not end the way anyone expected. So, here is where we are. Park Yung-woo. 11 years of exceptional law enforcement service, 0 compromised assignments, a record his division attributed to the institution rather than to him. Walks out of Chairman O's boardroom and does not call his handler, does not file a report, does not activate the extraction protocol he has been carrying in his back pocket since day one of an assignment that was supposed to last 18 months and has now run 4 weeks past that window, with no end date filed, and no one above him pushing hard enough to demand one. What happens next unfolds over 14 months, and it is not what you were expecting. Young-woo does not defect dramatically. There is no confrontation scene, no moment where he tears up his badge and throws it across a room, no declaration, no line spoken aloud that marks the crossing. What happens is quieter than that, and more permanent. He simply stays, day after day, report after report, filed late, filed thin, filed with just enough operational content to keep his handler from escalating. While inside the Haitian structure, he moves deeper, not because Chairman O directs him to, because Kwon Dae-young trusts him completely. And trust, inside an organization built on it, opens every door. By month 6 of his second year inside Haitian, Young-woo is no longer peripheral. He is operational, not in the violent sense, in the architectural sense. He is inside the rooms where decisions are made, present for conversations that map the full structure of the organization's financial movement, trusted by senior figures who have been inside Haitian for 20 years, and who do not trust easily or quickly, but who trust completely once the threshold is crossed. He has crossed it, and here is where the story produces its most devastating irony. The intelligence Park Young-woo accumulates during those 14 months is more comprehensive, more prosecutable, more structurally significant than anything his division had hoped to extract from the original 18-month assignment. He knows everything: names, routing, government contacts, the specific financial architecture that has insulated Chairman O from prosecution for 30 years. He has it all, and he files none of it, because by the time he has it, he is no longer certain what filing it would mean. Not for the case. For Kwon Dae-young, for Kwon's wife who calls him by his cover name with genuine warmth, for a 7-year-old girl who trusts him without reason, and who has, in the 2.5 years since he first sat at that family dinner table. Turn 9. This is the question the story leaves you with. Not, was Park Young-woo a corrupt officer? The review board answered that. Technically, legally, in the language institutions use when they need a clean category for a complicated outcome. The real question, the one that has no institutional answer, is this: at what point does a man who has found the first genuine belonging of his adult life, inside a structure he was sent to destroy, become responsible for protecting it? And at what point does the institution that created the conditions for that belonging, by never providing it themselves, lose the moral authority to call what happened betrayal? That question does not resolve cleanly. It was not designed to, because the Haitian cartel did not make Park Young-woo into something he was not. They made him into something he had always been, and never been allowed to be. If this story did something to you, if it left you sitting with a question you cannot immediately answer, that is what this channel is built for. Not resolution. Understanding. The kind that stays with you after the screen goes dark. Follow now, because the next story is already waiting, and it asks a harder question than this one. The button is there. The story continues the moment you press it.